All right, so this talk is The Editor is Broken. This is a tragic tale of walking in on a Monday morning to find out things are broken, and that lovely journey to figure out how to fix them and how to fix them in the right way. And I've been told I'm fairly good at figuring things out. So, a bit of context. A couple years ago, my company, we were using Slate, which is a widely adopted React-based rich text editor framework. And it was like work was getting kind of slow on it. So I said, hey, do you guys need some help? And Ian said, hey, Dylan, here's the keys. Go have fun, which was kind of crazy. I was telling the story at lunch a bit. But basically, he was just burnt out and needed a break. And so I took over maintaining Slate around, I guess, sometime in 2021, like mid-2021. So, I think I jumped the headline. Yeah, me. Here's the keys, bro. Yeah. Wasn't quite like that, but it was like that. So anyway, Slate is just this framework that is rich text editing. I started working with it in 2000. I wanted to build a rich text editor in the browser. My previous company was called SitePen because I wanted to make building sites as easy as using a pen. It turned out it was about 10 or 15 years too early, so I stopped working on that for a while. Started working on Dojo and various things, and I come full circle, and now I'm back to rich text editing. And it's not actually that much better. It's better, but it's not better enough. There is actually work being done on a new editor context spec that will replace is content editable, which is pretty cool, but that's probably at least a few years away. Rich text editing is some of the most difficult, challenging, mind-numbing, complex web engineering you can do because it's a spec that's imperfect. It's not round trippable, so the data you put in is not necessarily the data you get out. So you could like put stuff in and get stuff out, and then you put the same stuff back in and it won't give you the same result, which is just not pleasant. And it's really buggy and obtuse, especially when you think about things like inserting emojis or inserting blocks of code or other things that you take for granted in any sort of editing environment. So it's super complex, and you start thinking in terms of like these arrays of like 0, 1, 4, 7, 2, and that's like the top level 0th element, the next level's first element, the next level's 4th element, and so on. I probably said those numbers out of order, but it just becomes a real pain to manage. So there's a lot of users, products. I think the one you all might have heard of on here is Discord. They have a few users. And it turns out they were the ones that discovered this bug. Well, Campfire and Discord both discovered this bug. This was April 10th. They're like, how did you know to give a talk on this so close to the event? We had one speaker drop out, and I just said, all right, I'll give a talk. It'll be cool. So I figured I'd tell a story that was very relevant to something that just happened to me. So April 10th, just 18 days ago, Jason Loro is the co-founder of Campfire, which is a nice editor for people who write books and articles and stories. Huge issue with Slate and latest Chrome 112. And it describes the obscure use case, which probably doesn't make much sense as it's written. And he's like, I don't know how to fix it. Cool, I'll look at it shortly. Like the typical answer, right? Because it's 9:27 a.m. That's not that early. I'm usually up around 3:45. But still, most people aren't really interested in answering things at 9:45 in the morning. But I have no context, no details other than if you paste a tab in, Chrome behaves weird, and it's only Chrome 112. So I'm like, that's really strange. And so, I go to the editor and I have a look. This is what it looks like. And you start to type, you paste in a tab, and then you do that. And what happens? That's a little slow, sorry. Oh, I had to go in, because you can't actually type a tab character into a rich text editor in a browser, because it doesn't work that way. So you gotta do a tab somewhere else. And then paste the tab, and now look, it's duplicating text left to right, right to left. And it's just adding random crap in the DOM. But it's not in my Slate tree. It's like the strangest thing I've ever seen, and it's only if there's a tab character. I'm like, what the heck? And then if you do it long enough, it crashes the browser. So basically it leaks. So awesome, right? And I'm like, so I open my browser in Chrome 110, everything's fine. Chrome 11, everything's fine. 112, boom. And then of course, Brave and Edge 112 also broken. So that's the step where you verify. And you're like, he's giving me these details, and I'm like, yeah, I see it. It's cool, it's definitely there, it's definitely a problem. don't know what to do about it, but I'm buying myself some time, right? Because I'm like crap, these bugs are really hard to find sometimes. And so, I'm just kind of like taking my time, figuring things out, seeing what's happening. I laugh, but I mean, like, a lot of times, like, your solutions come like when you take a nap, or when you go to the gym, or when you go for a walk. Or like Steve Jobs always said, like, if you have a problem, go take a walk with me and we'll figure it out. Not me personally, just the people who worked with him, right? And that was kind of how you solve problems, is by taking your mind off them, letting your subconscious mind do the work and figure it out. Now, I'm somewhat of an eternal optimist, but most people would say, so where would you think you'd fix this problem? Like, your editor's broken, so where are you gonna fix it? Any ideas? No ideas, okay. Well, like, you could fix it in Slate, right? You could fix it in like pasting content in and not allow a tab character to be pressed. Or you could filter out tab characters. That kind of sucks, right? You could try to get a browser vendor to fix it, but you don't know what caused it, right? Or maybe there's maybe it's a dependency that Slate has that's broken. Like, you don't know, right? So you gotta like start to troubleshoot and figure it out. Most people, the default answer would be, well, it's Slate's problem, Slate's got to fix it. That's not my answer. Because I try to start like low level and work my way up, even if it's a little bit inconvenient. So the first thing I do is I write it down. So I hadn't opened a Chromium bug in like 5 years, but I started with Chromium. And my colleague and Jason, who's not my colleague, but we worked together on this stuff, he's like, why are you wasting your time? They're never going to fix it. It's going to take years before they respond. This is bug like 1,431,935 ever opened on Chromium. Like, how is this 1,400,000th bug going to suddenly get Chrome's attention, right? I'm like, well, it's how you tell the story. So what did I say? I said, presence of tab and then subsequent typing crashes Slate.js editor. It's kind of unassuming, it's factual. It crashes the editor. If they look up Slate.js, they'll see it's got a lot of GitHub stars and whatnot. So there's some people using it. And it's pretty severe. And then I'm like, hey, if you like put a tab character in an editor and you do this, it crashes. Like, that's a pretty bad bug. And it didn't do that before 1.12. So maybe you guys know what's going on. Just like kind of unassuming, kind of just like, hey, don't really know what's going around. By the way, we have a workaround. It's not great, but like, can you tell us what broke or why this happened? So instead of saying like, Chrome, go fix this, or Chrome, you're stupid, or hey, we're wrong, it's just like, hey, could you help us figure this out, right? And people like to solve problems, I think. So, but I also reported it to Slate, because what I wanted to find out was, did other people see this issue? And sometimes Slate users also use other editors. So maybe they would observe it in like some other rich text editor framework, or maybe it was just us, who knows? So then I basically decided to distort and bend reality, which is what I like to do. And while I was bored, I decided to ask Dolly, the chat GPT for images, to give me an image of Pac-Man doing yoga, just because. I'm a yoga teacher also for fun, so mostly it was just a reminder to like stay calm, chill, and find out what was really going on, right? So that was Monday. I went to sleep fine. I didn't lose any sleep over it. Wasn't that stressed about it, because while it was a bug, not everyone types tab into their editor. So like, and we'll find a solution soon enough. It won't be the end of the world. So wake up Tuesday morning. Well, not wake up. 1:54 a.m. my time. Jason's 8 hours ahead in Lisbon, and I'm in Phoenix. Says, hey, I got the solution. My quick fix is this hideous fix that doesn't make any sense at all. And I look at it, and I can immediately tell you this fix is not going to work. I can't tell you why. I just know it's too complex for the problem. And that's just instinct, or like, I don't know, I just sort of see this, and I'm like, there's no way this is not going to break 5 other things for you. But sure, go ahead, try it out, dude. Like, we'll see what happens. And not picking on Jason, Jason's the, the character in the story, but, he's just the person working with me. I'm like, dude, that's not landed in Slate. Sorry, we're not going with that. But, let me know if it works for you. In the meantime, the Chrome team confirms it's an issue. Everyone's like, whoa, wait, they responded. What happened? I'm like, well, sometimes people just respond to interesting things. There are a couple messages before that where they didn't understand the thing quite, and they tried to type in like /t as a tab character, but that's not enough to replicate the error. It actually has to be a tab character typed into the browser or into the content that's stored in the editor in the browser. So they verified it was a problem. And a couple days went by, and I was just super busy on other things. And Jason thought he had a solution, so I just kind of let it sit for a couple days. Turns out his solution was not good, didn't work. That's okay. So Friday rolls around, and I'm zen, I'm super chill, I'm patient, right? And so it's like, hey, Dylan, got any ideas? And I'm like, I'm gonna spend some time on it this weekend because it doesn't look like Chrome's gonna give us a quick answer. They confirmed it, but they haven't done anything with it. And he's like, bastards, kind of surprising. I haven't heard more about it. Must be a pretty specific issue. Okay. And I'm like, I have a feeling it's one of our workarounds. Otherwise, more people, we have a lot of workarounds for different, browsers and editors and whatnot. And I'm like, but I don't think what they changed was intentional. And this is just instinct again. This is just a guess. I don't really know if that's fact. And then he's like, sucks that Edge is Chrome-based too. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, but dude, no, you wouldn't support Edge if it wasn't Chrome-based at this point, because no one would care. But that's okay. So, there's our patience. We set that on fire too, because why not, right? So, but I was planning to work on it on the weekend, and then I had a little bit of time on Friday afternoon, and I had an epiphany. So I started playing with it, and I realized it was only if you typed letter characters. Lowercase, uppercase, or the space key. And I'm like, huh. He's like, that's odd. Didn't notice that. I'm like, well, you'd think you'd notice that if you're trying to hammer on this bug, but it's okay. I finally took a look at it and I noticed something very interesting. I'm like, so what are you gonna look for in your code base if you think it's just A through Z, capital A through capital Z, or the space character? What would you look for in a code base of 100,000 lines to try to see what might be causing this? A regular expression that is just the letter characters, right? And so turns out in our editor there's exactly one line that matches exactly those characters. And it's for the before input event. So the before input event is basically an event that fires before the character that you typed is input into the editor. Well, that's interesting, because before Chrome 68, we mimicked it, and then after that, we were able to use it natively. But this line was using it natively and was causing problems. So, huzzah, turns out, if I change one line from use native from true to false, the problem goes away. I mean, it's not necessarily the solution, but it's a true workaround, a one-line workaround that's easy to verify. And that's awesome, right? And so, and actually what's funny is a couple days ago, someone reached out to me I tried your workaround, it didn't work. And I'm like, are you sure? And they're like, yeah, I'm totally sure. I'm like, are you really sure? Can you did you use yarn patch correctly? No, I'm on yarn 1. I'm like, did you use the ESM version? He's like, oh, fuck. He'd loaded the CJS version. He'd edited the CJS version, but was loading the ESM version, which is welcome to our world of JavaScript hell. But it's basically he patched the wrong version of Slate, so his fix didn't work. Is it breaking up, or is it just me? I'll just try to hold it more steady. Okay. So anyway, I added that, and I'm like, hey, I think it's a input event. And then they're like, oh, yeah, we know what broke that. I'm like, cool. And they were basically just overly aggressive in trying to apply some conditional logic, but they didn't really test it. So they thought they were doing good for the web, and they were doing bad for the web. So the fix. There's the regular expression that's matched, that's highlighted, right? And the line below it is basically just setting native equals false to native equals true. Super simple, right? With my nice little comment there. So, in 4 days, we'd verified that it was a browser bug. We'd come up with a one-line solution that wasn't perfect because it did make the time to handle each character event increased by a couple milliseconds, which isn't great for editor performance, but not the end of the world. And had a real solution in Chrome, which was to reverse a commit that was made. And when I looked at Chrome, I looked at the differences between 1.11 and 1.12, and there were like 4,000 commits. So I wasn't really going to be able to narrow that down myself. I just didn't have time. And it wasn't anything that I would have known had caused the bug. So it was good to have someone on the Chrome team do that. So for a fairly difficult to comprehend bug that I really don't actually understand what caused it, I was able to track it down, isolate it, get a short-term fix, and get a real fix just by like talking to people and asking good questions and just kind of observing and not assuming that it was this or that or this, but just kind of applying the scientific method to debugging. So the next week, last week, what happened? It landed in Chrome 1.14, which just comes out in like 12 weeks. Fine, cool. Well, maybe 10 weeks. And then it landed in Chrome 1.13, which comes out in 4 weeks. Cool, that's nice. But then they're like, hey, this is a, sorry, I mean, just, well, ignore this for a second. Someone said, does this really need to land in 1.12? And I'm like, well, the world's not gonna end. But then this other guy comes in, he's like, yeah, and like, you know, it's broken in Discord. They only have 100 million active users, not a big deal, right? And so they're like, okay, we landed it, it's good. It'll ship early next week. So when you get your Chrome update next week and you click update, you'll be happy to know that our bug fix for Slate is in there, which is really cool. So that is how, without actually understanding the cause of a problem, just by like narrowing things down and asking good questions and talking to people and just kind of being calm, you can sometimes solve a bug that's hard to solve. And that's I didn't really ever tell you who I am. I'm Dylan. It's my co-founder and Eminem. We work on LivingSpec. And the reason we're so interested in Slate is it's the main editor we use for LivingSpec. I like to predict the future. I bet big on JavaScript 25 years ago, which most people would not have done. That might be a clue for a pub quiz question, I don't know. I'm the CEO at LivingSpec. I organize HalfStack, maintain Slate and Plate. I also work on a new project for WebGL graph, like network graphs. If you're interested in that, could use help with that too. And previously I ran SitePen and co-created Dojo and other things, but I really like LED lights and puns. Like spectacles made of LivingSpec is just the best, right? So anyway, that is my story of how to fix a bug calmly and rationally, even when you have no idea what could possibly be going wrong and everyone feels like the world is coming to an end. You can fix it in less than a week by just troubleshooting and using the tools you have available. But then you can get it fixed for real within a few weeks if you just are a little bit persistent and you provide good data and you ask good questions. So hopefully that helps you in your journey for solving your own thorny, impossible to solve bugs. Thank you. Any questions? Pete?
Does this reinforce your notion that all indentation should be done with white space instead of tabs?
Should all indentation be done with white space instead of tabs? No, but yes. So the funny thing is Dojo was one of the few projects that insisted on tabs versus white space. And now we don't care because we use prettier, right? So it just doesn't matter. I always argued for tabs because it's one less character to type. But the argument was always, well, it breaks Windows, or it breaks certain things, or it breaks people. Yeah, you know, like who cares? Like it shouldn't break me. It's not my problem. But I've come to accept that tabs and white spaces are both equally viable options, and whatever the project chooses to accept, it should be fine. Yep. Now the other funny question, there's a corollary question to that, which is, some people insist that all lists and editors should be created just by CSS, not actual indentation. That's how like the Google Docs editor does it. And I think that's a terrible solution because it's sort of like cheating the web instead of using the tools we have. Thank you all. Let's give it up for Griffin.